Choi Min-ho was never late. Punctuality was one of his main principles, along with an impeccable reputation and iron logic. At 33, he was considered one of the most successful family lawyers in Seoul. His office was located on the 27th floor of a glass skyscraper in the Gangnam business district, and his fees could make even wealthy clients turn pale. But they paid. Because Min-ho never lost a case. That October Tuesday began as usual. A run along the Han River at 6 a.m. A shower and light breakfast at 7, a review of case documents at 8. His new client, Hwang Ji-don, owner of a successful chain of beauty salons, had been accused of domestic violence. His wife had filed for divorce and was demanding compensation. A standard situation. Min-ho had already built his defense strategy: lack of direct evidence, witnesses on the defendant's side, medical reports open to interpretation. Ji-don had paid an astronomical sum precisely because he knew Min-ho would find a way out of any situation. The lawyer never asked unnecessary questions about his client's guilt or innocence. His job was simple: to protect their interests within the law. Ethics? Morality? Those were philosophical categories, and he practiced law. Mr. Choi, the car is ready, came his assistant's voice through the intercom. Min-ho glanced at the clock. 9:30. An hour before the hearing. He put on a perfectly pressed gray suit from an Italian designer, adjusted his dark burgundy tie, and picked up a leather briefcase with documents. In the mirror, a man with sharp features, neatly styled dark hair, and a cold gaze stared back. That was how he was known in court: dispassionate, calculating, untouchable. But it hadn't always been that way. Long ago, back in university, Choi Min-ho had been completely different. He laughed, dreamed, believed in justice, and loved so deeply he would have given up everything for one girl. Her name was Yuna-ri. They met in their first year of law school, and from that moment on, his life had meaning. Nari was bright, sincere, kind-hearted. She wanted to become a lawyer to help people. They made plans for the future, talked about opening a joint practice, about a house, about children. And then, 5 years ago, everything collapsed in a single day. Min-ho came home after class and found a note. Just a few lines: "Forgive me. I can't be with you. Don't look for me. Goodbye." Her phone was off, mutual friends knew nothing, and her parents refused to speak. Nari vanished from his life as if she had never existed. The first months were hell. Min-ho tried to find her, called every possible place, even hired a private investigator. No result. Then came numbness. The pain dulled, turning into a hollow void. He buried himself in his studies, then in his work. Built an impenetrable wall around himself, a wall with no place for feelings. Emotions made a man vulnerable. And he would never be vulnerable again. The drive to the courthouse took 20 minutes. The driver skillfully navigated the morning traffic while Min-ho reviewed notes on his tablet. The case was simple. Of course, the likelihood that Hwang Ji-don had beaten his wife was high, but there was not enough direct evidence. Medical reports documented injuries, but without witnesses, intent would be hard to prove. And Min-ho would neutralize the witnesses quickly: a few leading questions, and their confidence would crumble. The district court greeted him with its usual bustle. Lawyers, witnesses, plaintiffs, and defendants crowded the halls. Min-ho walked toward the elevator, ignoring curious glances. Everyone here knew him. The Ice Demon, that's what young attorneys called him for his ability to coldly dismantle any argument from the opposing side. Courtroom 4 was on the 3rd floor. Min-ho entered at exactly 10:25, 5 minutes before the session. His client, Hwang Ji-don, already sat at the defense table, a man in his 40s, wearing an expensive suit and a smug smile. Upon seeing his lawyer, he gave a look of relief. "Mr. Choi, I knew I could count on you," he muttered. Min-ho nodded silently and began laying out the documents. At that very moment, His eyes drifted to the plaintiff's bench. And the world stopped. There, on the wooden bench, sat a woman curled into herself. A huge belly, 9th month of pregnancy. Her left arm was bandaged, traces of a cast still visible. A dark bruise on her cheekbone, almost healed but still noticeable. Faint marks of fingers on her neck. Her hair tied in a simple ponytail. Modest clothes, a gray sweater and dark maternity pants. But that wasn't what froze him. He would have recognized that face among millions. Those eyes, that curve of the lips, that tiny mole under her right ear. 5 years. 5 years he tried to forget, but every detail remained etched in his mind with photographic precision. Nari. His Nari. The woman he had loved more than life. The woman who had left him without a word. The woman he had never been able to forget, no matter how hard he tried. And she was here. On the plaintiff's bench. Beaten. Pregnant. In a case against his client. The briefcase slipped from his numb fingers and hit the floor with a dull thud. Several sheets scattered across the tiles. G.I. Don turned, startled. Mr. Choi? Are you all right? Min-ho didn't hear him. He couldn't tear his eyes away from Nari. She raised her head at the sound of the falling briefcase. Their eyes met. First confusion. Then recognition. Then horror. Nari turned away sharply, but Min-ho had already seen it, the trembling of her lips, the way her hands clutched her belly. She recognized him. And she was afraid. All rise. The court is in session, announced the clerk. Everyone stood. Min-ho rose automatically, though his legs barely held him. His mind was fog. What was happening? How was Nari here? Why was she pregnant? And most of all, why was she on the plaintiff's side in a case against his client? The judge, an elderly woman with silver hair and a stern face, took her seat. Please be seated. Case number 2843. Plaintiff, Nari. Defendant, Hwang Ji-don. Case concerning dissolution of marriage and compensation for damages due to systematic domestic violence. The words fell like shards of a shattered world. Nari. Hwang Ji-don. Marriage. Domestic violence. Min-ho slowly turned his head toward his client. Ji-don's face was expressionless, but at the corners of his lips played a faint, self-satisfied smirk. Confident. Smug. Defense, are you ready? Asked the judge. Min-ho didn't answer. He couldn't. His brain refused to function. All he could see was Nari, her trembling hands, her bruises, her pregnant body. Mr. Choi? The judge's voice rose. My apologies, Your Honor, Min-ho said hoarsely. I need a short recess. The judge frowned but nodded. 15-minute recess. Min-ho stood abruptly and headed for the exit. Ji-don tried to follow, but the lawyer stopped him with a gesture. He needed to be alone. To think. To understand. He walked down the hallway to the window at the end, braced his palms against the sill, and tried to breathe. It was hard. His chest ached with something heavy and painful. For 5 years, he had kept his emotions locked away. For 5 years, he had built armor around himself. And now, with one look, that armor cracked, turned to dust. Nari was married to his client. To the man he was supposed to defend. To the man who, judging by the documents, had beaten her. Min-ho clenched his fists so hard his knuckles turned white. No. This couldn't be real. There had to be an explanation. A mistake. A misunderstanding. Footsteps behind him. Min-ho didn't turn. Mr. Choi, came Ji-don's voice. What's going on? Why are we asking for a recess? The case is simple, we just need to. Be quiet, Min-ho cut him off coldly, without turning around. What? Listen, I'm paying you a fortune so that, Min-ho turned sharply. His eyes were like shards of ice, clear and cutting. The woman on the plaintiff's bench. Yunari. Who is she to you? Ji-don blinked, clearly not expecting that question. My wife. Well, still my wife, for now. Though after the divorce, I'm not asking about her legal status, Min-ho interrupted. Who is she to you? How do you see her? Ji-don smirked and waved a dismissive hand. She's a slut, that's who. Got herself knocked up, and got what she deserved. Thought I'd support someone else's bastard? I just taught her how to behave. Now she's making up stories to squeeze money out of me. But you'll handle it, right? I heard you're the best. Silence. Min-ho stood still. The client's words hung in the air like a poisonous fog. Slut. Got herself knocked up. Got what she deserved. Taught her. Something clicked inside him. Not broke, clicked, like a switch being flipped. 5 years of cold rationality, 5 years of suppressed emotion, 5 years of denying his true self, all of it washed away in a single instant. Min-ho slowly straightened. His face remained expressionless, but something new glimmered in his eyes. Something Hwang Ji-don didn't see, because he didn't know this man. Rage. Let's go back to the courtroom, Min-ho said evenly. The hearing is resuming. Ji-don nodded in relief, assuming his lawyer had regained composure. They returned to the courtroom. Everyone took their seats. The judge tapped her gavel. We'll continue. Defense, are you ready to present your position? Min-ho stood. Every movement was precise, deliberate. His gaze swept across the courtroom, the witnesses, the clerk, both parties. For a moment, his eyes lingered on Nari. She was looking down at the floor, her shoulders tense. Your Honor, Min-ho began in a calm voice, I have a statement. I'm listening. A deep breath. The point of no return. I, Choi Min-ho, hereby officially withdraw from representing the defendant, Hwang Ji-don, in this case. The courtroom froze. Even the judge seemed taken aback. What? Ji-don jumped to his feet. You've got to be kidding me. Min-ho turned to him. I'm not. Our agreement is terminated. You may request a refund of your fee. Mr. Choi. The judge raised her voice. This is an extremely unusual statement. What's the reason? Min-ho looked at her again. His voice didn't waver. A personal conflict of interest, Your Honor. I can no longer represent the defendant objectively. But, and that's not all, Min-ho continued. I respectfully request permission to represent the plaintiff, Yunari. The courtroom erupted. The judge banged her gavel, trying to restore order. Ji-don shouted something about betrayal and money. The opposing lawyer, a young man in glasses, stared with his mouth open. And Nari. Nari lifted her head and looked straight at Min-ho. Her eyes were full of shock, disbelief, fear, and something else. Something he couldn't quite name. Silence in the courtroom. The judge shouted. Mr. Choi, do you understand what you're asking? Switching sides in the middle of a case is, I understand, Your Honor. But please note that the main hearing hasn't yet begun. No evidence has been presented. Technically, a change at this stage is possible if both parties consent. The judge turned to the plaintiff's attorney. Mr. CO, do you object? The young lawyer blinked nervously. I need to consult with my client. All eyes turned to Nari. She sat pale and trembling, her lips moving soundlessly. At last, she whispered, I need time to think. The judge nodded. Understood. This is indeed an extraordinary situation. The court will recess until tomorrow. Mr. Choi, you are to remain until adjournment, but your further participation will be decided after the plaintiff consults with her counsel. Mr. Huang, you will need to find a new attorney. Court is adjourned. The gavel struck. People began to disperse, though the hum of conversation didn't fade. Min-ho gathered his documents into his briefcase without looking at anyone. G.I. Don stormed up to him, face twisted with rage. You'll regret this. I'll sue you for breach of contract. You're finished, Choi. No one will ever hire you again, feel free to try, Min-ho replied calmly, without raising his eyes. There's a clause about withdrawal in case of conflict of interest. I'm within my rights. He picked up his briefcase and headed for the door. As he passed the plaintiff's bench, he paused for just a second. Na-ri was still sitting there, her hands clasped protectively over her belly. Their eyes met. 5 years of pain, 5 years of unanswered questions reflected in that gaze. But Min-ho said nothing. He simply nodded and left. In the hallway, he took out his phone and dialed his assistant. Chanmi, cancel all my meetings for this week. And find me everything you can on Huang Ji-don, finances, business, connections, reputation. Dig deep. We don't have much time. He hung up, leaned against the wall, and closed his eyes. He had just destroyed his career. Publicly withdrawn from a client in open court. Everyone would hear about it. His flawless reputation was now in jeopardy. But he didn't care. Because for the first time in 5 years, he felt alive again. That night, Min-ho didn't sleep. He sat in his office, surrounded by stacks of papers illuminated only by a desk lamp, studying every detail of the case. Huang Ji-don, 42 years old, owner of a chain of 12 beauty salons across Seoul. Annual income, around 2 billion won. Married 3 times. The first marriage ended after a year, reason unspecified. The second wife died under mysterious circumstances, a fall down the stairs of her own home. The investigation was closed as an accident. And now, the third wife, Na-ri. Min-ho went through the medical records he'd managed to obtain through his connections. The first hospital visit, 2 years ago, 1 year after the wedding. Diagnosis, fractured wrist. Official reason, fell at home. Second visit, a year and a half ago. Concussion. Reason, hit her head on a cabinet door. Third, fourth, fifth. The list went on for pages. Sprains, bruises, cuts. Always accidents. Always at home. The last record, 3 weeks ago. Broken arm, abrasions on the neck, multiple hematomas. This time, neighbors called the police after hearing screams. This time, it couldn't be hidden. Min-ho clenched his fists. 2 years. For 2 years she'd lived through this nightmare. And he had known nothing. Hadn't searched hard enough. Had accepted her disappearance. Locked himself in his shell and stopped feeling. While she had been suffering. At 4 a.m, an email from Chanmi arrived. She had worked through the night gathering information. Min-ho opened the attachments and began reading. With every page, his face grew harder and harder. Huang Ji-don wasn't just a successful businessman. He was a monster. The testimonies of former employees from his salon spoke volumes: harassment, intimidation, threats. Most of the women quit on their own, terrified of lawsuits. One of them filed a complaint, but the case was closed after she suddenly withdrew it. Rumor had it, she'd been paid off. Or threatened. And this was the man Min-ho had planned to defend. This man, he had called his client. Nausea rose in his throat. At 7 a.m, Min-ho took a shower, changed into a fresh suit, and drank a strong coffee. He needed to act. Today, he had to meet Na-ri. Talk to her. hear her side of the story. But how? She probably wouldn't want to see him. 5 years without contact, and now he was suddenly back in her life, in this situation. The phone rang. An unknown number. Hello? Mr. Choi? A young male voice said. This is Attorney Seo Jun-ho, representative of Yuna-ri. We met yesterday in court. Min-ho straightened. I'm listening. My client would like to meet you. Privately. This afternoon, if it's convenient for you. His heart skipped a beat. Stop it. Enough. He forced himself to stay composed. Where and when? At 2 o'clock. Café Autumn Garden on De Hackno Street. Do you know it? I'll find it. I'll be there. Good. One more thing, Mr. Choi. Miss. You asked that you come alone. No assistants, no witnesses. She needs to speak to you personally. Understood. Thank you. Min-ho hung up. His hands were trembling. In 7 hours, he would see her. They would talk. For the first time in 5 years. How would he explain himself? What could he say? I'm sorry I defended the man who beat you. I'm sorry I didn't find you sooner. The words felt weak and hollow. But he had to try. The rest of the morning passed in preparation. Min-ho made a list of questions he needed to ask Na-ri to build her defense. He studied every weak point in Wong's testimony. He planned his strategy. Work helped him not to think about the personal side, about how much he had missed her, how he had tried to forget but couldn't, how even now, after everything, his pulse quickened at the thought of seeing her again. At 1 in the afternoon, he got in the car and drove to the meeting. The Autumn Garden Cafe was tucked away in a quiet alley near the university, a small, cozy place with wooden furniture and bookshelves along the walls. Min-ho entered at exactly 2 o'clock. Na-ri was already there, sitting at a table in the far corner, her back to the window. She was dressed simply, a light sweater and a long skirt. Her belly looked even larger than yesterday. Her face was gaunt, dark circles under her eyes. Her hands nervously twisted a napkin. Min-ho approached the table. Their eyes met. 5 years vanished. He saw again the girl he had once fallen in love with in the university library, the one who laughed at his jokes, who fell asleep on his shoulder during long trips, who promised to always stay by his side. Hello, Na-ri, he said softly. Hello, Min-ho, she replied just as quietly. He sat across from her. Between them lay a chasm of 5 silent years. Thank you for agreeing to meet, Min-ho began. I understand how difficult this must be for you, and why did you do it? Na-ri interrupted, her voice trembling. Yesterday, in court. Why did you drop his case and why do you want to defend me? Min-ho looked her in the eyes. Because I can't defend the man who hurt you. You didn't even know it was me when you took the case, she countered. That's true. But when I found out. When I saw you. He paused, searching for words. I couldn't go on. I couldn't stand in that courtroom and defend the one who did this to you. Na-ri turned away. Tears glistened in the corners of her eyes. You shouldn't have done that. Now you'll have problems. He's dangerous, Min-ho. He won't stop. He'll come after you. Let him try. I'm not afraid of him. But I am. She almost cried out, making a few people turn their heads. Lowering her voice, she added, I'm afraid for myself. For the baby. For everyone who tries to help me. You don't know what he's capable of. Then tell me, Min-ho said firmly. Tell me everything from the beginning. I need to know what we're dealing with. And I promise, I'll protect you. No matter what it takes. Na-ri studied his face for a long time, as if trying to decide whether she could trust him. Finally, she nodded slowly. All right. I'll tell you. But you have to promise not to judge me. What I did back then. I'm not proud of it. I won't judge you. Nari took a deep breath and began to speak. Her voice was quiet and flat, as if she were telling someone else's story. 5 years ago, in November, my father got into an accident. He was driving in the rain and lost control of the car. He survived, but his company. His business collapsed. Debts, creditors, bankruptcy. My parents lost everything, the house, the savings, everything. My father ended up in the hospital after a heart attack from the stress. My mother had to take 3 jobs just to pay for his treatment. Minho clenched his jaw. He remembered Nari's father, a good, honest man who ran a small construction business. I tried to help, Nari continued. I took part-time jobs, but a student's income is nothing. We needed serious money. And then he appeared. Huang Jiaidong? Yes. He was a friend of one of my father's creditors. He heard about our situation. Came to the hospital while I was there. Said he wanted to help. Offered to pay off all the debts, cover my father's medical bills, buy my family a new home. All of it, for free. In exchange for what? Minho asked hoarsely, though he already knew. For me to marry him. Silence. Only the ticking of the clock and the faint noise of the street outside. He said it was just a formality, Nari whispered through tears. That he needed a wife for business events, for status. That it would only be on paper. That after a year or 2 we'd divorce and I'd be free. And my family would be saved. I didn't know what to do. My father was dying. My mother was collapsing from exhaustion. I had no choice. But you could have told me. Minho burst out. I would have helped. We would have found a way. How? Nari flared up. You were a student. You had no money. My family's debt was in the hundreds of millions of won. And he made me promise not to tell anyone about the deal. Especially you. He knew about you. He knew we were together. He said that if I refused or told anyone, he'd make sure my father never got his treatment. So I wrote that note. I broke your heart. And I married him. Minho closed his eyes. The pain was almost physical. All this time, he thought she'd left him. That she didn't love him. That she'd found someone better. But she had sacrificed herself for her family. The first few months were bearable, Nari continued. He ignored me. I lived in his house like a ghost. But then something changed. He started drinking. Demanding that I act like a proper wife, host dinners, smile for his partners, pretend everything was perfect. And when I refused or did something wrong, she touched the cast on her arm. The first time he hit me was a year after the wedding. I fell, broke my wrist. He apologized, said it would never happen again. I believed him. Foolish of me. You're not a fool, Minho said firmly. You're a victim. It got worse every time, Nari said, staring out the window as if she didn't hear him. He beat me for anything. For soup that wasn't salty enough. For talking too long with guests. For daring to argue. I tried to leave, but he threatened me. Said he'd find me anywhere. That he'd destroy my family. That he had connections, money, power. And I was afraid. Afraid for my parents. Afraid for myself. Minho reached across the table but stopped short of touching her. And the baby? Nari gave a bitter smile. A year ago, he decided he wanted an heir. He didn't ask what I thought. He just. She fell silent, and Minho understood. His stomach turned. When I got pregnant, I thought it might change something. That maybe he'd soften. But no. He got worse. Started accusing me of cheating. Said the baby wasn't his. Even though I never left the house without his permission. 3 weeks ago was the last straw. He got drunk, started shouting that the child wasn't his, that I was a whore. He grabbed me by the throat and shoved me down the stairs. I fell, broke my arm. The neighbors heard the screams and called the police. And that's how I ended up here. She went quiet. Tears streamed down her face, but she didn't even wipe them away. She just sat there, clutching her belly, small and broken. Minho felt rage rise inside him. Cold, controlled, but no less destructive for it. 5 years. 5 years she had lived in that hell. While he built his career, defended monsters, and hid behind the armor of indifference, she suffered. I'll destroy him, Minho said quietly. I swear to you, Nari. I'll destroy him. He's going to prison. And you'll be free. You and your baby will be safe. Nari looked up at him. You don't understand, Minho. He has connections. Money. He'll buy off witnesses, judges, anyone. He always wins. He hasn't faced me yet, Minho said coldly. I know how to play those games too. And I play to win. He pulled a folder from his briefcase. I studied his case all night. I've got evidence. Medical reports, witness statements from neighbors, CCTV footage from the building. And I'll find more. His former employees, his ex-wives, yes, I know the first one divorced him for similar reasons. I'll build the case so tight, he won't have a chance. Nari looked at him with something that resembled hope. You'd really do that? Even knowing it could destroy your career? My career? Minho gave a wry smile. Nari, I spent 5 years defending people I should have despised. I became the kind of man the old me would hate. If losing that career is the price for getting my humanity back and helping you, then it's the best deal I've ever made. She began to cry softly. Not sobbing, not making a sound, just tears flowing and flowing, as if a dam had broken. Minho handed her a napkin. Their fingers brushed for a second, and a jolt went through him. 5 years, and the feelings were still there. Buried under layers of ice, but alive. What should I do? Nari asked, wiping her tears. Trust me, Minho said simply. Tomorrow morning, I'll file the paperwork to become your attorney of record. Mr. CO is a good lawyer, but young. He lacks experience for a case like this. I'll take over everything. You just hold on. We're almost there. I promise. Nari nodded. She looked exhausted, but there was a spark in her eyes, something that hadn't been there in court yesterday. Hope. They stayed in the cafe for another hour. Minho asked questions, clarified details, took notes. Nari answered, sometimes stopping when memories became too painful. He didn't rush her. Just listened, wrote, planned. When they left the cafe, Nari suddenly stopped. Minho? Yes? Thank you. For not turning away from me. He looked at her. I could never turn away from you, Nari. Even if I wanted to. She smiled, for the first time since their conversation began. A weak, sad smile, but still a smile. Minho walked her to a taxi, made sure she got in, and noted the plate number to check later that she'd arrived safely. Then he returned to his car, sat behind the wheel, and just stared ahead in silence. 5 years. 5 years of being dead inside. But now he knew, he had a reason to live. A reason to fight. He took out his phone and called Chanmi. Get everything ready for tomorrow. We're taking on Nari's case. And we're going to win it. No matter what. The next 2 weeks were chaos. Min Ho worked 18 hours a day gathering evidence. He hired a private investigator who dug up Huang Ji-don's filthy past, a dozen former employees harassed, 2 business partners cheated, a whole network of corruption. Every detail, every fact fit perfectly into the pattern. Huang wasn't just a violent husband, he was a predator who had used his power all his life to hurt others. The hardest part was finding the first wife. She had moved to Busan after the divorce and changed her last name. But Min Ho was persistent. The investigator traced her through old property records. Min Ho went to Busan himself and spent 3 hours persuading the woman to testify. At first, she refused, terrified of retaliation. But when Min Ho showed her a photo of Na-ri's bruised face, something broke in her eyes. "I couldn't do anything back then," the ex-wife whispered. "I just ran. Left him and hid. But if my testimony can help that woman now, I'll speak." It was a breakthrough. Her statement established a pattern of behavior, proof that Huang had beaten not only Na-ri, but others before her. At the same time, Min Ho was preparing Na-ri for court. They met every other day in his office, a safe place where Huang couldn't reach her. Min Ho practiced possible prosecution questions with her, taught her how to respond, how to stay composed, how not to break under cross-examination. Na-ri was smart, quick to grasp things. But sometimes she froze mid-answer, her face going pale, hands trembling, panic attacks. Min Ho learned to recognize them. He'd stop the rehearsal, bring her water, and just sit beside her until she calmed down. One evening, during the 3rd week of preparation, one of those attacks hit hard. Na-ri couldn't breathe, sobbing uncontrollably. Min Ho instinctively pulled her into his arms, gently, mindful of her belly. She clung to his shirt and cried, for a long time, releasing years of pain and fear. When she finally calmed down, Min Ho didn't let go right away. He just held her, feeling her heartbeat, her breathing. 5 years he had longed for this closeness. 5 years he had buried every emotion. And now, holding her again, he realized with terrifying clarity, he still loved her. Just as much as before. Maybe even more. But he couldn't tell her that. Not now. She was too fragile, too hurt. A confession would only complicate things. His job was to protect her in court and give her back her freedom. After that, she would decide what to do with her life. Finally, the day of the trial arrived. November 5th. A cool autumn morning. Min Ho met Na-ri at the courthouse entrance. She wore a dark gray maternity dress, her hair neatly tied back. The cast had been removed a week ago, but the bruises hadn't fully faded. Min Ho insisted she not cover them with makeup. The judge and jury needed to see the marks of abuse. "Are you ready?" he asked quietly. Na-ri nodded, though her hands were trembling. "I'm ready." The courtroom was already full. The case had drawn media attention. An attorney abandoning a wealthy client to represent the victim was a sensation. Journalists snapped photos, shouted questions. Min Ho ignored them and led Na-ri inside. Huang Ji-don was already seated at the defendant's table with his new lawyer, the famous attorney Lee Sung-gyu, known as the Shark for his ruthlessness. When Huang saw Na-ri, he smirked and whispered something to his lawyer. Both laughed. Min Ho felt his blood boil but forced himself to stay calm. Emotion was the enemy in court. What he needed was cold logic and ironclad evidence. The judge entered, the same elderly woman who had presided over the case from the beginning. She scanned the room sternly. "The hearing for case number 2843 will now continue. I remind everyone to maintain order. Mr. Choi, have you officially joined the case as the plaintiff's representative?" "Yes, Your Honor," Min Ho stood. "Very well. Then let us hear the plaintiff's testimony. Miss, you, please take the stand." Na-ri stood up. Min Ho gave her an encouraging nod. She walked to the witness stand, placed her hand on the Constitution, and swore to tell the truth. The next 2 hours were a trial in every sense. Min-ho methodically asked questions, building a timeline of abuse. Na-ri answered calmly and clearly, though her voice trembled. She spoke of the first time he hit her, of her broken wrist, of being locked inside the house, of how Hwang had strangled her on the staircase 3 weeks ago. Hwang's attorney, Lee Sung-gyu, listened with a mocking smile. When his turn came, he rose with visible relish. Miss, you claim my client beat you regularly. Tell me, then, why didn't you go to the police sooner? Why wait 3 years? I was afraid, Na-ri said quietly. Afraid? Lee sneered. Or perhaps because there was no abuse at all? Maybe you simply invented these accusations to get money in the divorce? Objection. Min-ho shot up. That is speculation unsupported by facts. Sustained, said the judge. Mr. Lee, stick to the facts. Lee didn't flinch. Very well. Then explain this, MS. Why do your medical records list accidents as the cause of your injuries? If my client beat you, why didn't you tell the doctors the truth? Na-ri clasped her hands together. Because he made me lie. He said if I told anyone, it would get worse. He made you, Lee mimicked her tone. Do you have proof of that? Recordings? Witnesses? He did it when we were alone. Of course, Lee sighed theatrically. Always alone. No witnesses, no proof. Very convenient for your accusations, don't you think? Mr. Lee. The judge warned sharply. But Min-ho could see it, Na-ri was starting to break. Her breathing quickened, her hands trembled. He had to act. Your Honor, he rose. I request permission to present new evidence. The judge nodded. Min-ho signaled to his assistant, who turned on the projector. A medical file appeared on the wall. This is the medical record of the defendant's first wife, Mrs. Hwang Mi-sun, Min-ho began. As you can see, during her 1-year marriage to Mr. Hwang, she was admitted to the hospital 7 times. Diagnoses: broken nose, concussion, dislocated shoulder, multiple contusions. Each time, the listed cause was domestic accident. A remarkable coincidence with MS. Yu's own medical record, isn't it? The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Hwang's lawyer frowned. Objection. This has no relevance to the current case. On the contrary, Min-ho shot back. It demonstrates a clear pattern of behavior by the defendant. And that's not all. Your Honor, I would like to call a witness, Mrs. Hwang Mi-sun. The courtroom doors opened. A woman in her 40s entered, small, thin, visibly nervous. She looked around, then stepped to the stand. After being sworn in, Min-ho asked, Mrs. Hwang, were you married to Hwang Ji-don from 2015 to 2016? Yes. And did he use physical violence against you? She closed her eyes. Yes. Regularly. He hit me for the smallest things. I divorced him as soon as I found the strength to do it. Why didn't you go to the police? I was afraid. He threatened to find me, to make things worse. She looked straight at Hwang. But I can't stay silent anymore. I won't let him ruin more women's lives. The courtroom exploded. Reporters scribbled frantically. The judge banged her gavel. Hwang Ji-don turned crimson and leapt to his feet. Lies. She's lying. Sit down. The judge ordered. Or I will have you removed. Min-ho continued. He presented statements from Na-ri's neighbors, who had heard screams and blows. Surveillance footage showing Hwang dragging Na-ri by the hair into the building after one of their fights. Psychological evaluations confirming Na-Ri's trauma and post-traumatic stress. By the end of the day, Huang's defense had collapsed like a house of cards. Li tried to counterattack, but his arguments sounded weaker and weaker. There was simply too much evidence. Too much truth. The judge announced a recess until the next day for the verdict. Min-ho walked out of the courtroom with Na-Ri. She was on the verge of fainting. The day's tension had drained her completely. "You were incredible," he said softly, steadying her by the arm. "Did we win?" she asked. "Not officially yet. But yes, we did." Na-Ri stopped and turned toward him, tears glimmering in her eyes. "Thank you, Min-ho. I couldn't have done this without you." He smiled, a real smile, the first in weeks. "We did this together." He escorted her to the car and was about to leave when Na-Ri suddenly clutched her stomach, her face twisting in pain. "Na-Ri? What's wrong?" I don't know," she whispered. "Something's wrong. Min-ho, it hurts." A cold wave of terror gripped his chest. He lifted her and helped her back into the car. "Hold on. I'm taking you to the hospital." He sped through the streets, ignoring red lights. Na-Ri groaned, clutching her belly. Min-ho kept talking to her, desperate to keep her conscious. "It's going to be okay, you hear me? Everything's going to be fine. Just breathe. Breathe like I taught you, in case of panic, in, out, in, out." Finally, they reached the hospital. Min-ho jumped out, shouting for help. Nurses came running with a stretcher. Na-Ri was taken into the maternity ward. "Are you the husband?" one of the nurses asked. Min-ho opened his mouth to say no, but instead heard himself reply, "Yes. I'm her husband." "Then come with us. She needs support." The next few hours blurred together. Min-ho held Na-Ri's hand as doctors worked around her. Labor had started early, the stress from court had triggered contractions. Na-Ri cried, screamed, squeezed his hand so tightly that it left marks. "Min-ho. I'm scared," she whispered between contractions. "Don't be. I'm here. I'm with you." He stroked her hair, never letting go of her hand. "You're strong. You can do this." And she did. At 3 a.m, when the world outside was dark and silent, a cry filled the room. Tiny, weak, but alive. "A girl," the midwife announced. "Congratulations." Min-ho saw her, a small red bundle, wrinkled, waving her tiny fists. The nurse wrapped the newborn in a blanket and placed her on Na-Ri's chest. Na-Ri burst into tears, clutching her daughter. "My girl. My baby." Min-ho watched them, overwhelmed by emotion. Joy, tenderness, love, everything he had locked away for years poured out all at once. And in that moment, he understood, he wanted to be part of this. Part of their lives. Forever. The next day, the judge delivered the verdict. Min-ho was still at the hospital with Na-Ri and missed the session, but his assistant, Chang-mi, called right after the announcement, "Mr. Choi, we won. Complete victory." Huang Ji-dong was sentenced to 3 years in prison for systematic domestic abuse. Plus a restraining order against Mrs. Yu. Plus compensation of 500 million won. And the divorce is finalized immediately. Min-ho closed his eyes, feeling a wave of relief. "Excellent. Thank you, Chang-mi. Send me all the documents once they're ready." He hung up and returned to the room. Na-Ri was lying in bed, holding the baby. When she saw him, she smiled, for the first time, a bright, fearless smile. "So? How did it go?" "We won," Min-ho said simply. "He's going to prison. You're free." Na-Ri pressed her daughter to her chest, and tears streamed down her face, but now they were tears of relief, of happiness. The following week passed in a blur. Na-ri and the baby were discharged from the hospital. Min-ho helped her find a small apartment in a safe neighborhood and paid the first few months' rent. Na-ri tried to refuse, but he was adamant, "You're still recovering. You have a newborn. You can't go back to work yet. This isn't charity, Na-ri. It's a friend helping a friend." She looked at him for a long moment. "Are we friends?" "I hope so," he said quietly. Na-ri hesitated, then nodded. "All right. Thank you, Min-ho, for everything." He helped her settle in. Brought furniture, a crib, a stroller, everything a mother and baby could need. Na-ri watched him in quiet amazement. "Were you always this caring?" Min-ho chuckled as he assembled the crib. "Not always. For the last 5 years, I was a complete selfish bastard. But I think I'm starting to remember who I used to be." By the time everything was done, night had fallen. Na-ri fed her daughter and laid her down in the crib. The baby slept peacefully, breathing softly. Min-ho stood beside the crib, looking down at her, his face softened. "What will you name her?" he asked. "Seo-jin," Na-ri replied. "It means precious. Because she's the most precious thing in my life." Beautiful name. They sat together on the couch in silence. The city murmured outside, but here, in the small apartment, it felt safe and calm. "Min-ho," Na-ri said softly. "Why are you doing all this?" He looked at her. "What do you mean?" "You ruined your career for me. Spent weeks preparing my case. Helped me find a home. Why? We hadn't seen each other in 5 years. I left you without explanation. I hurt you. So why?" Min-ho was silent for a long time. Then he said slowly, "Because I never stopped loving you." Silence. Na-ri stared at him, wide-eyed. "For 5 years I tried to forget," Min-ho continued. "I shut myself off, became cold, detached. I thought it would help. But the moment I saw you in court, I realized I'd just been hiding. Hiding from pain, from feelings. But they never left. I still love you, Na-ri. Just as much as I did back in university." Na-ri covered her face with her hands, her shoulders trembling. "But I don't expect anything in return," Min-ho added quickly. "You've been through hell. You have a newborn. You need time to heal, to find yourself again. I just wanted you to know the truth about how I feel. After that, it's up to you." Na-ri lowered her hands. Tears streamed down her face, but she was smiling. "Min-ho, you're an idiot." He blinked. "What?" "I love you too," she whispered. "I never stopped. Even when I married Huang. Even in the darkest moments. I thought of you. Of how happy we once were. Of how you laughed. How you held my hand. Those memories kept me alive." Min-ho froze, unable to believe what he'd just heard. She loved him? "But I can't." Na-ri's hands trembled. "Min-ho, I'm broken. I'm scarred. I have a daughter, a child that isn't yours. I don't know if I can ever be normal again. You deserve someone better." "Stop," Min-ho cut her off sharply. He moved closer, taking her hands in his. "Stop thinking you're not enough. You survived a nightmare and lived. You brought a beautiful life into this world. You're stronger than you think. And Seo-jin." He looked at the sleeping baby. "Seo-jin isn't someone else's child. She's part of you. Which means she matters to me too." "But." "No buts," Min-ho said firmly, squeezing her hands. "I'm not asking you to marry me tomorrow. I'm not asking for anything except a chance. A chance to be here. To help you. to support you. And maybe, someday, when you're ready, we can try again. Try to rebuild what we lost 5 years ago. Nari looked at him through her tears. Then, slowly, she nodded. All right. Let's try. Minho smiled. And for the first time in 5 years, his smile was real, from the heart. The following months were strange, but happy. Minho was careful not to intrude, but he came by every day. He brought groceries, helped with the baby, or just sat quietly while Nari rested. Little by little, the closeness they once had began to return. Nari started seeing a therapist. The trauma from the abuse ran deep. Panic attacks came often. Sometimes she woke up at night drenched in sweat, screaming. Minho stayed with her on those nights, holding her hand, whispering comforting words until she fell asleep again. I'm sorry, she whispered one night after another nightmare. I'm sorry for burdening you with this. You were never, and will never be, a burden, Minho said firmly. We'll get through this. Together. As expected, Minho's career suffered. Most of his clients dropped him after the scandal over his refusal to defend Huang. They called him unreliable, unpredictable. But Minho didn't regret it. Instead of chasing high-profile cases for the wealthy, he started taking pro bono work, defending victims of domestic violence, helping those who couldn't afford a lawyer. His income dropped drastically, but for the first time in years, he felt truly happy. You've changed, Nari remarked one day as she watched him play with Seo Jin. The baby was 3 months old now and had begun to recognize him, smiling whenever she saw him. For the better, I hope. Minho smiled, tossing the baby gently into the air. Definitely for the better. You've become softer, more human. Do you remember how, in university, you always said you wanted to help people? I do. Then I forgot about it. But now I remember. Nari stepped closer and took his hand. Thank you for finding your way back to who you really are. And for helping me find myself, too. Minho intertwined their fingers, feeling the warmth of her hand. Slowly, day by day, they grew closer again. Sometimes he stayed the night on the couch when Nari was having a particularly hard time. Sometimes they just talked until dawn, reminiscing about their college days, sharing dreams of the future. One evening, while Seo Jin was asleep, Nari suddenly asked, Minho, have you ever thought about children? Your own, I mean? He paused to think. I used to. When we were together, I imagined us having a family, 2, maybe 3 kids. A house with a garden. A dog. He chuckled. The typical dream. And now? Minho looked at Seo Jin sleeping peacefully in her crib. Now I think. I already have a daughter. Maybe not by blood, but in my heart, she's mine. Nari began to cry again. She cried often these days, hormones, emotions, recovery. But these tears were different. Do you really mean that? She whispered. I do. Every time I hold her, every time she smiles at me, I feel a connection. I know I didn't bring her into this world, but I love her as if I had. Nari hugged him, tightly, desperately. Minho wrapped his arms around her, burying his face in her hair. They stayed like that for a long time, simply holding each other. Time passed. Seo Jin grew, chubby cheeks, bright eyes, that adorable toothless smile. Minho was there for every milestone. Her first smile. Her first laugh. The first time she wrapped her tiny fingers around his and refused to let go. Nari, too, was healing. Slowly, with setbacks, but surely. Therapy helped. Minho's steady presence helped even more. 6 months after the divorce, she was finally able to go outside without a panic attack. 7 months later, she started looking for work and found a remote position at a small law firm, reviewing documents from home. One warm May evening, they were walking through the park with CO Jean sleeping in her stroller. They moved slowly, enjoying the peace and the soft air. "Min-ho," Nari said suddenly. "I want to tell you something." "I'm listening." She stopped and turned to face him. "I'm ready. Ready to try again. To be with you. For real this time." Min-ho froze. "Are you sure?" "I don't want to rush you." "I'm sure. These past few months, you've proven that I can trust you. That you won't leave me no matter what. And I want to be with you. I want us to be a family." Min-ho pulled her into his arms and kissed her. Gently, tenderly, with all the love he had carried for years. Nari kissed him back, wrapping her arms around him. When they pulled apart, both were smiling. "Then I have an idea," Min-ho said. "But I'll need a few days to prepare everything." "What idea?" "A surprise." "Will you trust me?" Nari smiled softly. "I trust you." 3 days later, Min-ho arrived at Nari's apartment with an envelope in his hands. He looked solemn, almost nervous. "What's this?" she asked, taking the envelope. "Open it." She did. Inside was an official document, stamped and signed. As she read, her eyes widened. This is CO Jin's birth certificate?" "Yes. A new one. I filed for adoption a month ago. It was approved yesterday." Min-ho sat beside her, taking her hand. "I'm officially CO Jin's father now. Legally. Forever." Nari stared at the paper. In the father line, it said, Choi Min-ho. Hwang Ji-dam was gone from her daughter's life, replaced by the man who truly loved them both. Min-ho. Her voice trembled with emotion. "I know this is a big step," he said. "And I should have asked you first. But I wanted it to be a surprise. I wanted to show you that I'm serious. That I don't just say words, I take responsibility. For CO Jin. For you. For us." Nari was crying again, tears of pure happiness. She threw her arms around him, holding him as tightly as she could. "Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you." Min-ho held her, stroking her hair, feeling warmth spread through his chest. This felt right. This was what he'd been meant to do. "But that's not all," he whispered. Nari pulled back, looking at him in surprise. Min-ho sank down on one knee. From his pocket, he took a small box and opened it. Inside was a simple ring with a small diamond, modest, but beautiful. "Nari," he began, his voice trembling. "We lost 5 years. 5 years we could have spent together. I don't want to lose another day. I love you. I love CO Jin. I want to be there every morning when you wake up. I want to tuck our daughter in every night. I want to build a life with you, a family, a future. Will you marry me? Please." Nari looked at him, tears falling onto the floor, but she was smiling. Brightly, radiantly, happily. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Min-ho. 1,000 times yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Then he rose and kissed her, long, deep, filled with all the love that had built up over their years apart. Just then, CO Jin's cry echoed from the crib. She'd woken up, demanding attention. They both laughed. Min-ho walked over, picked her up, and smiled. "Hey there, princess. You know what? I'm officially your dad now. And soon, we're going to be a real family." CO Jin smiled at him, that sweet, toothless grin, and Min-ho felt his heart overflow with love. The wedding was set for 2 months later, a small, intimate ceremony with only close friends and family. Na-Ri's parents, who had finally learned the truth about her marriage to Huang, cried tears of joy. Her father, now fully recovered from illness, hugged Min-ho tightly. "Thank you for saving my daughter. Thank you for bringing her back to life." Min-ho could only nod, his throat too tight to speak. The morning of the wedding was warm and sunny. Na-Ri wore a simple white dress, nothing extravagant, just elegant and beautiful. When Min-ho saw her, he couldn't hold back his tears. She was stunning. Radiant. Alive. The ceremony took place in a small chapel. Seo-jin, almost a year old by then, sat happily in her grandmother's arms, occasionally making cheerful noises. When the priest asked, "Do you take this woman to be your wife?" Min-ho answered firmly, "I do. I swear to protect her, love her, and stand by her all my life." "Do you take this man to be your husband?" "I do," Na-Ri said, smiling through tears. "I swear to love him just as deeply as he loves me." They exchanged rings and kissed to the applause of their guests. And in that moment, Min-ho knew he was finally home. After 5 years lost in cold emptiness, he had found his way back. To Na-Ri. To Seo-jin. To where he truly belonged. The reception was simple but full of joy. Friends made toasts, reminiscing about their university days, when Min-ho and Na-Ri were inseparable. Their parents cried and laughed at the same time. Little Seo-jin tried to climb into the cake, and everyone burst out laughing. When the celebration ended, the three of them returned to their new home, small but cozy, the house Min-ho had bought especially for their family. Seo-jin fell asleep almost immediately, exhausted from the day's excitement. Min-ho and Na-Ri sat on the couch, wrapped in each other's arms, gazing out at the city lights. "Are you happy?" Min-ho asked softly. "More than words can ever say," Na-Ri murmured, leaning closer. "I never thought I could feel this happy again. After everything that happened, I thought I'd never be able to trust or love again. But you brought me back to life." "You brought me back to life," Min-ho countered gently. "I was dead inside for 5 years. And then I saw you in that courtroom, and everything changed. You saved me, Na-Ri. Just like I saved you." They kissed, slow, tender, filled with a love that had survived years of pain and distance. A year passed. Seo-jin had started taking her first steps and saying her first words. Her very first word was "Daddy" when she saw Min-ho coming home from work. He nearly cried with joy. Na-Ri had fully recovered. Therapy was over. Her psychologist told her she'd done tremendous work and no longer needed regular sessions. The panic attacks became rare, then disappeared altogether. She returned to work, this time at an office, a small law firm specializing in women's rights. Min-ho continued taking pro bono cases, helping victims of abuse. His reputation was gradually rebuilt, but for different reasons now. People called him the second chance lawyer, a man who helped those who had lost hope. The pay was nothing compared to his old career, but he was happy. One evening, while they were putting Seo-jin to bed, the little girl suddenly asked, "Daddy, do you love me?" Min-ho smiled, kissing her forehead. "More than anything in the world, princess." "More than Mommy?" Seo-jin asked slyly. Na-Ri laughed. Min-ho put on a serious face. "That's a very difficult question. I love Mommy differently, but just as much. You're both the most important people in my life." Seo-jin nodded contentedly and closed her eyes. A minute later, she was fast asleep, softly snoring. Min-ho and Na-Ri tiptoed out of her room. "She's getting too smart," Min-ho remarked. "Who do you think she takes after?" Na-Ri teased. They sat on the couch. Min-ho wrapped his arm around her, and she rested her head on his shoulder. "You know," Na-Ri said quietly, "sometimes I dream about that night in the courtroom. When you turned against Huan and said you would defend me. I still remember the shock. I couldn't believe you actually did it. I couldn't do anything else, Minho said. The moment I saw you there, I realized nothing else mattered. Not reputation, not money, not career. Only you. Do you ever regret it? She asked softly. Minho turned to her, meeting her eyes. Not once. Not for a single second. It was the best decision I ever made. Nari kissed him, long and deep. When they finally pulled apart, she whispered, "Me too." "I'm happy, Minho. Truly happy." Another 6 months went by. One morning, Nari woke up feeling nauseous. Minho immediately grew worried. "Are you okay? Should I call a doctor?" No, Nari smiled faintly. I think I know what it is." She went to the pharmacy, bought a test. The result was positive. Nari stared at the 2 pink lines, her heart racing. She was pregnant. Pregnant again. But this time, it was different. This time, the child was from a man she loved. This time, there was no fear, no pain, only love. That evening, when Minho came home, she greeted him with the test in her hands. "I have news," she said. Minho looked at it, not understanding at first. Then it clicked. His eyes widened. We. Really?" Nari nodded, smiling through tears. "Really? We're having another baby." Minho hugged her so tightly she squeaked in surprise. Then he laughed, loud, pure, unrestrained laughter. "We're going to be parents. I'm going to be a father. A real biological father." "You already are a real father to Sojin," Nari said softly. I know, Minho whispered, holding her close. "But this is incredible. Thank you, Nari. Thank you for giving me this family." The pregnancy went smoothly. Unlike the last time, Nari was surrounded by love and care. Minho went with her to every doctor's appointment, read books for expectant fathers, and assembled the crib himself. Sojin, now 2.5, was thrilled at the thought of having a baby brother or sister. "Mommy, will the baby play with me?" she asked, gently patting Nari's rounded belly. "Of course, sweetie," Nari smiled. "When the baby's a little older." Labor began early one morning in March. Minho drove Nari to the hospital, holding her hand the whole way. Sojin stayed with her grandmother. In the delivery room, Minho never left her side, supporting and comforting her. "You can do this," he whispered. "You're strong. I love you." And she did. A few hours later, a baby boy was born, healthy, strong, with a powerful cry. The doctor placed the newborn on Nari's chest, and she burst into tears of joy. "Minho, look. Our son." Minho looked at the tiny red, wrinkled, perfect little person, his son. Their son. He touched the tiny hand, and the baby gripped his finger tightly. "Hello, little one," Minho whispered. "I'm your dad. And I'll love you forever." They named him Min-jun, meaning bright and talented. Sojin came to the hospital to meet her mom and baby brother and was immediately enchanted. "He's so small. Can I sing to him?" "Of course you can," Nari smiled. The family was complete: Minho, Nari, Sojin, and baby Min-jun. Minho looked at them and thought about how much his life had changed. 2 years ago, he'd been alone, cold, and lost. Now he had a wife, a daughter, a son. A home. Love. Everything he had ever wanted. 3 years passed. Min-jun was 3, Sojin 5.5. They lived in a spacious house with a garden where the children could play. They even had a golden retriever named Bombom. Life was full of laughter, noise, and love. Minho continued his legal practice, focusing on protecting victims of abuse. His firm had grown, 5 employees now, handling up to 40 cases a year. Many were still pro bono, but it was enough. Most importantly, his work mattered. Nari became a partner at her own firm, also helping women in difficult circumstances. Sometimes she and Min Ho worked together on cases, just like back in university, when they dreamed of running a practice side by side. Hwan Ji-don had served his sentence and been released a year ago. He tried to contact Nari but was met with a renewed restraining order, extended for another 10 years. His business had collapsed, his reputation was ruined. The last thing Min Ho heard about him was that he worked as a store manager and lived alone. Justice had prevailed. One sunny Saturday, the family went on a picnic. They found a beautiful meadow by the lake, spread out their blankets, and unpacked the picnic basket. The children ran around chasing butterflies, Bombom barked and leapt around them, and Min Ho and Nari sat on the blanket, watching. "You know," Nari said, resting her head on her husband's shoulder, "sometimes it feels like all this is a dream. Too good to be true." "It's not a dream," Min Ho murmured, kissing her temple. "It's our life. The one we built together." "I'm so grateful to you," Nari whispered. "For not giving up on me. For saving me. For this family." "We saved each other," Min Ho replied gently. "You saved me from the emptiness I was living in. You gave me purpose, direction, love. We're a team, Nari. We always were, and we always will be." So Jean ran up to them, holding a flower in her hand. "Mommy, look. I found the prettiest flower for you." "Thank you, sweetheart," Nari said, taking the flower and kissing her daughter. Min Jun immediately demanded his share of attention. "Daddy. Daddy, play ball with me." Min Ho laughed and stood up. "Of course, champ. Let's go." He ran across the field with his son, kicking the ball back and forth. So Jean joined them, and Bombom barked and darted in circles around them. Nari watched the scene, her family, whole, happy, filled with love, and felt her heart swell with gratitude. The road had been long and painful. Years of suffering, loss, and fear. But at the end of it, she had found something she never dared to dream of, a second chance. Happiness. Love. And beside her was the man who had walked through hell to save her. The man who had given up his career, his reputation, everything he had, for her. The man who became a father to her children and loved them as his own. Choi Min Ho. Her savior. Her love. Her home. That evening, after the children had fallen asleep, they sat together on the veranda, holding hands and gazing at the stars. "Min Ho," Nari said softly. "Yes? Thank you for not letting me give up. For believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself. For showing me that life can be beautiful." Min Ho squeezed her hand. "And thank you for bringing me back to life. For giving me the family I always dreamed of. For loving me." They kissed beneath the stars, and that kiss held the whole story of their love, the past filled with pain, the present overflowing with happiness, and the future radiant with hope. Many years passed. So Jean grew up, graduated from high school, and entered university to study law. Min Jun followed in her footsteps. Both wanted to become lawyers, like their parents, to help people, to defend the vulnerable. Min Ho and Nari had another child, a daughter, whom they named Yuna, after their mothers. Their family grew, expanded, and overflowed with love. Min Ho often thought back to that day in the courtroom, the day he saw Nari sitting on the witness stand. The day everything changed. The day he made his choice, to turn away from his client, from money, from reputation. And never, not once in all the years that followed, did he regret that decision. Because in return, he had gained something priceless. Love. Family. Purpose. He had saved Nari, but in truth, she had saved him. And together, they built the life they had once dreamed of, back in their distant university days, a life full of love, happiness, and hope.